Welcome to today's episode of the Dog Training Dogma with your host, Jonathan Katz. As always, in the studio with me is Hood Rat Heather. Welcome, Heather.
Hello, hello.
Today, we are going to do a little bit of a story time.
Love story time.
I love a good story. It's, especially it's stories from the olden times, from back in the day.
Ooh.
Right? So, I started PSA in the end of 05, beginning of 06. And when at the club that we were part of, I'd never really worked with distractions before. My original mentors were Schutzhund trainers, right? Padded stick, whip. Obviously, I understood, like ball pits and things like that. But when I joined that PSA club, the first one, it was really kind of, my intro into accessories, distractions. And so we had bottle curtains. I had taught my dog that bottle curtains were not scary, right? I had taught the dog that to go towards the bottle curtain. I had shown it on the grip, off of the grip. What I did was, a mistake that I made was I didn't show him that it was permeable. I didn't show him that he could push through it. I just showed it, over him so I brought Uzi to Nationals in 2010. This is my first time showing at Nationals. When the decoy pops out for the handler attack, he has two gigantic bottle curtains. They were the big Gatorade bottles. There was about, 5 strands of 5, so 25 bottles. And he had 2 of them. Now, the decoy is supposed to come out, impress, and then once the dog commits to coming forward, the decoy is supposed to open up, put the dog in the pocket, and then turn, drive, close up, right? Fight the dog. Well, the decoy comes out, and the decoy never opens up. Big decoy, medium-sized dog. I didn't teach him that he could push through it. And so that decoy was able to hold him off for, 2 or 3 seconds. Now, he never turned around. All he was doing was trying to find his way in. And then finally, once the curtain opened up, he pushed through it and he bit. Not the perfect picture, but the dog had heart and the dog pushed through the stress. But where was the error in my training was I wasn't teaching the dog. It's not a solid piece. It's a bunch of recyclables strung on, pieces of PVC. The dog can push through it. So that frustration of my dog not doing as well as he could have, me not preparing him to the extent that he needs to be prepared, I decided to go home and basically put anything that I can on a string, on a curtain, and start making all these different distractions. So obviously I bought a ton of, like police tape and things like that and made big streamers. I made these really big bottle walls. I made, like a full bottle PVC 7-foot high wall. That comes from Belgian ring training. The dogs have to push through those big walls. So obviously the dog has to permeate it. And I like myself a good fridge cigarette. I like a Diet Coke every so often. And so I have cans around. And so I started stringing cans on curtains. Now, really quick disclaimer. I am not claiming that I'm the first person to ever make a can curtain, because I guarantee you that someone's done it before me. I had never seen one before, but it's the same concept as the bottle curtain. Obviously, in the European sports, metal is not allowed. So like in Mondio ring, you'll never see a Mondio ring accessory with cans on it. Metal is illegal, right? Because it potentially could injure the dog. Using traditional, soda cans or beer cans Once they flatten, now they start breaking. Now they start becoming jagged. So I would make ones without tape. I would then make ones with tape. The tape muffles the sound a little bit, but it lasts a lot longer. Once the cans kind of crush, you can kind of roll them back out. If you try to roll them back out without the tape, it's basically just going to turn the whole thing into razor blades. So with the thin cans, but no muffling of the tape, they're very loud, but they only last for a very short period of time, right? Obviously, as time went on, we figured out using like the Miller Lite, the beer cans. I don't like when people are making them out of the tumbler bottles. I have seen decoys, break teeth. I have seen, decoys get knocked in the head. I've seen dogs get knocked in the head. It's just too hard, right? So I came home. I started building anything that I could out of into a curtain, into a distraction. And I was coming to it was Midwest Regionals in 2012. And the decoys that were selected, they had seen that I was making distractions. And when I first started making these distractions, I was really just trying to provide better training for myself, my club members, my friends, my students. And then I started making them for sale, and I was really just trying to pay my gas money to go to trials. You're a young, broke, dog sport competitor that's like hunting a 3. And so you're going to go to every trial that you can possibly reach to, up your chances of passing. And I was really just trying to pay my gas money. So I would set up a table, I was charging like $30 for a curtain. Like nowadays curtains are going for 75, 100. I've seen $120, right? Like obviously inflation, but supply and demand, more people training, more people needing curtains, I think it's cool that, it's like I walked so that, all these other, younger trainers that are selling curtains could run. Because when I first started selling curtains, people laughed at me. You're going to sell recyclables on a, 30-cent piece of PVC with some string for $30? And I'm like, hey, you can go and make it yourself. I took the time to do it. I had a guy one time, he messages me and goes, Jonathan, I'm sending you $200. And I said, okay, but why are you sending me $200? And he goes, because I want you to just send me whatever that will get me in curtains, in distractions. And I said, okay, well, now I need to understand the story. And he goes, well, I made a curtain. I was very proud of myself. I brought it to club. And one of my club members asked me legitimately, oh, did your daughter make that? And he was very offended. He didn't want to tell everyone that he made it. He said, I'm just going to throw money at the problem and, buy curtains from someone that makes it, right? For me, it's busy work. My ADHD, even though I have to sit and relax because my body hurts, but also I have to be doing something with my hands, right? I stopped making curtains for sale, pretty much, I'd say about 10 years ago when I really started getting into leather work, and that kind of fulfilled that niche. But, in the beginning, they were dirt cheap. I was really just trying to, get some gas money to go to a trial. And I had a guy one time, I set up a table and he comes over, he picks up this it was a bottle curtain. And he goes, how much for this? And I said, $30. And he kind of laughed at me and set it down and walked away. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to let people get under my skin, he doesn't want it. It is what it is. Well, he goes over to a mutual friend of ours and goes, excuse my French, but who the fuck does this kid think he is trying to sell a bunch of recyclables for $30? So My friend comes over and tells me this, and now I'm upset because not only is he just not going to purchase my product, which is totally okay, but now he's actively talking shit about me on the sidelines. So I said, wait, isn't this guy in the ones? Like, isn't he showing his dog? And he's like, yeah. And I go, okay. So I took that bottle curtain off the table. I start angrily shoving pennies in it. And I go out, I go, I'm doing the handler attack. And I went out and I ran the dog. And I asked him after, I go, hey, it's still for sale. Like, you don't go over, just a piece of advice, no matter what the sport, but don't go over to the decoy that's about to battle your dog and talk shit. Like, this is just, you're just asking for trouble. This is not a MMA fight where it's the bravado of man versus man or woman versus woman or person versus person. Like, this is man versus dog. The weight of a man's ego is a lot for a dog to bear. Like, don't go over to the decoys and talk shit. Go over and shake the decoys' hands and thank them for catching your dog and working your dog safely. Thank the decoy for being fair and consistent. Don't go over and talk shit. Like, especially if you have a ring dog and you're trying to do PSA, you have to understand that your dog doesn't have the targeting for PSA. It'd be like going and doing KMPV with a ring dog. Like, yes, the decoy's in a full bite suit, but in PSA, the decoy's charging at the dog. Like, we want to know where the dog's going to go for safety. We don't want to injure dogs. We don't want to injure decoys. So, you have to understand that going into PSA with a dog that doesn't target, that's always looking for pivot leg, like, we're going to try our best to make it look as pretty as possible, but it's never going to be fluid because your dog lacks the technique for this sport. Your dog possesses the technique for another sport. Don't go into the decoy tent and basically tell the PSA decoys, well, they don't know how to work dogs. So, like, it's extremely offensive. These people are there working for free. Don't go over to a decoy and say something offensive. Like, it's just rude. They've taken of their time to go and decoy a trial and they're not getting paid. Like, I shouldn't have to deal with your bullshit too. So I was traveling through the Midwest. I was visiting Chicago and I had made a big bag. I took one of my hockey bags and I filled it with a bunch of curtains because I'm just trying to sell these things along the way to pay for my gas. And two of the decoys that were decoying Midwest Regionals was like, hey, bring us some can curtains. I like those can curtains. Let's go play with them. So this is regionals. This is a championship. And I brought him the two can curtains. There were, as far as I can remember exactly, it was either 10 or 12 dogs. Let's say there were 10 dogs in the ones. One pulled, one bit, and 8 dogs ran. Now, the judge approved it. The wording of the rule book stated curtains, bottle curtains. It didn't specifically state can curtains. And if anyone that has any experience in like higher levels and competing in PSA, like gray areas are gray areas. What it does say, you can't, if it says you can't do something, then you can't do it. If it says you can do something, then you can't. If it doesn't say either of those, it's gray and either can or can't, depending on the judge, depending on the environment, depending on the situation, depending on the advocation that you give yourself and your dog. So, people were upset. I went over and shook the hand of the person that pulled their dog. To me, that was the only smart handler, other than the dog that bit, that was regional champion. They knew that their dog was going to be pushed through a distraction they'd never seen before. But like, Heather and I have pulled up to a trial before. First thing in the morning, we pull into the parking lot and someone comes over and knocks on our window and goes, hey, do you have a can curtain that we can train with really quick? And I'm like, dude, it's the trial's in 2 hours. Like, you want to prepare your dogs for these things. You want to show them the fact, like, would we not say that sport changes training? Like, can you not say that PSA has changed the way that people train their dogs? You know, there hasn't been a sport before PSA that had that much agitation in obedience and requiring that much neutrality. Like, that's a lot. How do we create all that stim? A lot of loud noises, right? And the can curtain makes a lot of noise. I would say now the fact that the can curtain has changed training so much that every dog has seen a can curtain, but the main issue I see now is dogs not wanting to out with the stim of the cans. So your dog's a thrasher, your dog's shaking their head. Every time they shake their head, they're shaking that can. So because people have taught the dog that cans and that stim of the sound of the cans going means bite, every time the dog shakes, even though they're hearing out, every time they shake, it's telling them to bite. It's sending mixed signals. In the beginning of introducing these distractions, we want to teach the dog that you can push through it, that you can win. I want the dog to hear, I want my young dog to hear the sound of a can curtain and get excited. I see too many people trying to raise their puppies for PSA 3 with all of this desensitization to stim. But then when it comes time for the dog to actually go into that environment, into a stressful environment with that stim, the dog's been desensitized to it. They've been counter-conditioned that it's not supposed to make you excited. The can curtain is like, every time people, you know, I'll go and I'll give seminars and I'll meet people and I'm like, oh, all that annoyance that you hear, you know, of all the can shake. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's my fault. I was not first person to make a can curtain, but I'm the person that brought it to PSA trials. And then basically dogs had issues with it. So what does that make us do? Train harder. What does that make us do is change the way that we train. So I've brought can curtains to go train with police departments, and the cops will laugh at me and go, that's some sport shit. And I go, I have seen more dogs run from these cans than not. I was working with a department one time and I brought out my can curtain. They were like, that's a great idea. We got a homeless guy in town that's always causing problems, and he's always walking around with a cart with big bags of cans. And one time we went to go, you know, he wasn't complying. We went to go put the dog on him, and the guy just started ripping up the bags of cans and like smashing the bags of cans on the dog, and the dog didn't engage. That's a distraction we have to work through. It's just a lot more controlled of an environment that all of the cans are strung on a bar that I can, you know, make noise, I can put it in, I can take it away, as opposed to just cans all over the floor. You know, the scenario that I enjoy the least training is the attack on motorist, because after the decoy throws the bucket of balls, then you have 5 people come over and everyone's got to pick up a bunch of balls, right? If you took the balls and you strung them to the bucket, so it'd be like you could fake out, you can basically dump the bucket, the balls will come out, but the balls are still connected, right? As we went through, as we started figuring out, now I ended up seeing those same can curtains like 3 or 4 years later, and the decoy was still using them. And I'm like, dude, this is just basically a bunch of razor blades. It was literally a curtain of razor blades. And I'm like, this was one-time use. This was, you had your fun at regionals. Those 2 curtains, I'm a sentimental person, so I would have hung them on the wall. But those should have been retired after that regional event. Like, you can't keep using these. So now, you know, I just see people using better quality bottles. Honestly, the easiest place to get like the bottle cans is nowadays you can go to any supermarket, Walmart, big box store that has a whole section of water, and you can buy them in water bottles. They're thicker than a traditional can, but if push comes to shove, they will break. If push comes to shove, they will bend, as opposed to I see people trying to like make them last longer by using these tumblers, and I just think they're dangerous. Maybe a couple of like two of them together could be more controlled, but like if you're talking about an entire curtain of tumblers, like you're the chance of like you could knock a dog out with that, and they're heavy, right? You have to understand why are Mondio ring accessories like thinner and longer? Because they're there to impress the dog from a distance, because the decoy's standing at a line and he has to basically send, I don't know, 6 feet, however long the regulations. I had my buddy Oscar Mora was going to decoy his first Mondio ring trial, and he hit me up. And this is when I was like still actively making distractions. He goes, "Hey, can you make me some Mondio ring accessories?" And I'm like, "Well, I've never made Mondio ring accessories before, but I can look at pictures and videos and kind of try to make something." I made him to match his suit. I got tape to match his suit that he was wearing at the time. And I made these 7-foot long, I bought online little like 5-hour energy sample bottles. So I just got this box of like 1,000 sample bottles. And I want to say it was like 7 strands. I don't even remember how many were on each one, but they were relatively big. And when he got them in the mail, he's like, "Dude, I don't know if the judge is going to approve these." And I go, "Well, I don't know what I'm doing here. I never made these things before. So go ask him." And the judge was like, European judge. The European judge was like, "Yep, no problem. Totally legal." There was one dog in the Mondio 2, blew the entire exercise, wouldn't push through. And one dog in the Mondio 3 was held off for like 4 seconds. And the handler was very upset. Those are not legal. The judge approved them. So I had then been asked that year, it was that year or the next year, a decoy that was decoying Mondio Nationals. And he was like, "Hey, can you make me accessories to match my suit?" So it was like an alien theme. And so I made these like kind of tentacle looking things. And so he got them, he posted it, and I like shared it. Like, I'm very honored to have been asked to make, accessories for Mondio Nationals. And someone got on there and was like, "I make the accessories for Mondio Nationals. You don't make them." And I was like, "I'm so sorry. Not trying to step on your toes. I was commissioned to do this. I got paid to do this. I was just proud to see like creations that I've made in another sport. No problem." So after Nationals was over, again, trying to make friends and not enemies, I messaged the person that normally makes the accessories for Nationals. And I go, "Hey, I'm just curious, because you've been making these for a long time. I've never made these before. What's your opinion? What'd you think of them?" And she goes, "Jonathan, funny thing. It's actually really good you made those, because the ones that I made, the decoy destroyed on the first dog, and we had to use yours for the rest of Nationals." I was like, "Cool." This is, I enjoy seeing the fruits of my labor being enjoyed. I enjoy seeing something that I made. Now I enjoy seeing the leather scratch aprons that I made being used. I'll be scrolling through Instagram and I'll see like an apron I made like a while ago, being worn by a decoy that I'd never met before. And I just kind of, enjoy watching, watching those products that I made being used, right? Being enjoyed. So how do we push to be better trainers? Wouldn't that be pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and pushing ourselves through, more stressful environments? We might not necessarily succeed the first time, but if we don't succeed, we try again. But we try again with using that failure as a learning lesson. That year, Nationals 2012 was in Maryland, and they brought out can curtains. I didn't make the can curtains, but already the judges are like, we see this. So they brought out can curtains, and a lot of the dogs had a lot of issues. All of my club dogs didn't have any issues with it, only because we had spent months conditioning these dogs that can curtains mean bite. Now, from that same Nationals, I was in the twos with Uzi. For a very long time, the heading picture of the PSA website was a picture of Uzi. If you remember it, there was a decoy, a guy named Dwayne Baker, phenomenal decoy from Utah, very powerful decoy. He's standing next to a red pickup truck, and he's gotten the curtain out here. And there's a dog like coming around the vehicle, launching over it. So that was Uzi. It was a phenomenal shot. A picture tells 1,000 words, but a picture only tells a split second in time. So that picture was like amazing. And you see the dog is like this far away from the bike going over the curtain, you know. Well, what you don't know that happened a split second later was Uzi had a big chest. And that decoy was so rigid with the bar, right? Because he's such a strong, powerful decoy. He was holding it so tight that Uzi went to go launch over it, and his chest hit the bar, and he basically like fell back. And so decoy gets on him, right? He flips around, grabs him by the leg. I was very proud. I had been working my legs a lot. Teaching that secondary target, like if you can't get to where you're supposed to go, like you can go somewhere else. And so grabbed him by the leg, you know, again, not perfect picture, but a fight is a fight. And whatever you got to do to win the fight and stay in the fight, you know, the goal is to just not turn around and run away. The goal is to stay in that fight. So these things that are scary are things that actually make us stronger, are things that make the dog stronger. How do we introduce these distractions? The most common mistake, the number one mistake that I see young decoys, I'm going to say it's from lack of experience. I'm not going to say that it's, you know, it's more ignorance than, you know, like being malicious. But they add distractions on the grip. They give the dog a bite, and then they start bringing in the curtain. All distractions need to be taught off of the grip. Stress comes before the bite if we want the dog to perceive the bite as a reward. I teach my dogs that the bite is the reward, and that's what I'm looking for. So all the distractions are going to be introduced before the grip. Once you push through it, once you push through the center of it, once you get to the bite, the distraction is going to go away. This is the concept they're initially going to be taught. Then they're going to be taught the distraction won't stop until they're on the grip for a second. Then they'll be taught that the distraction won't turn off until they're on the grip for 5 seconds, and so on and so forth, where the dog will come in and fight for however long we need them to, and then it'll eventually stop. At some point, it is going to stop. You know, decoys can only go for so long, right? So all of these distractions make our dogs stronger if we introduce them properly. Clatter sticks. I see decoys introduce clatter sticks like they're distractions. The clatter stick is a constant. The clatter stick should always be there. The first second I work a puppy, the first time, there should be a clatter stick there. I might just go clack, clack, and then set it down and then work the puppy. But still, their introduction to that cue, that antecedent of hearing the clack, 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 should start before they ever start working. That should be their cue. I want my little puppies as they come out, they're looking out, they don't know what they're about to do. Okay, well, I'm on a harness, so I'm excited. I'm still in my conditioning phase. But then they come out and I go, tack, 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 and they go, woo! Ah! They start getting really excited. I want that. If I then have them stick their head in a box and eat food out of a box while I'm tack, 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 tack for them to ignore it, what does that stick mean? I get it. The argument's going to be, well, context. Jonathan, you always talk about context. I agree, context. But what's the initial introduction to context? And then what is the counter conditioning to context? I want the context of the stick and the can curtain to mean, in its initial introductory phase, excitement, excitement. Not necessarily that they're biting, but exciting. Biting is exciting, but I just want the dog to be excited. If I'm trying to teach the dog to be nice and calm and relaxed under that level of stim, if that's their initial introduction to it, that's how they're going to feel. You could try to then amp them up after, but like taking a shy kid and trying to pull them out of their shell, like, sure, you can pull out a little bit, but they're never going to be Ricky Bobby's children. Anarchy! Like, those confident little kids, the shy kid is always insecure. I don't want my dog to be insecure. I want my dog to see those things, and I prefer for them to, like, choose violence over submission. I can counter condition that when they're older and they're more mature. There's so much to be said about a dog maturing. There's so much to be said about, like, just let the dog sit. Bob, my bobcat, you know, half Malinois, half pit bull, personality of a pit bull, reacts to things like a pit bull, drive and intensity of a Malinois, tenacity of a Malinois. So he doesn't act like a Malinois and the you know, with characteristics of a pit bull. He acts like a pit bull. He's just more drive. I let him sit. I let him sit for about 6 months. And then when I pulled him back out, like, I didn't have to build aggression. The aggression was there already. He didn't have to do all this defensive work. The maturity did him good. There's a lot to be said about training the dog in front of you by way of their maturity level. Everyone's trying to rush their dog. Well, how mature is the dog at a year? How mature is the dog at 2 years? How mature is the dog at 3 years? Heather's seen it. Honey Badger turned 3, and now all this aggression started coming out. And I go, she's just like a mother. Yeah. I'm your mother. She's just like her mother. Up until 3, she was just a happy-go-lucky, easy-going. And then about 3, she was like, what you talking about, Willis? Right? You know, and now you're seeing it. So believing in the lines, believing in, you know, the temperament and, you know, the growth rates of the parents, right? But that's atypical of my lines, right? The dogs that I traditionally produce mature a lot quicker, right? We had 2 litters, Puma Riot.
Right. Yeah.
Puma Ryu.
Puma Ryu.
And then Cougar Grim.
Yes.
The Cougar Grim puppies at like 5 weeks old, you'd have to go in the box to clean the box with your suit pants on. Yeah. Like little piranhas, just tiny little piranhas. They just latch onto you. Right? And then Puma Ryu, potatoes. They were the cutest little potatoes, but they were just potatoes. They just kind of lounged and relaxed. And, you know, at 9 weeks old, they were like, I'll play a little bit. Now, key thing, always confident, always recovered. They're just kind of confident little potatoes. So one of the handlers, she got a mail from the litter. And I said, look, before you get this puppy, I'm just telling you, you might not see what you're looking for like 6 months by way of the bite work. As long as he's confident, as long as you're bonding with him, you'll have no problems. And so, and I repeated it a few times, like, hey, just be prepared. The puppy might not bite the way you're looking for it to bite for 6 months. Now, once the puppy turned 6 months, I got, everything's amazing. But come to find out, at 3.5, 4 months old, she was sitting on the curb outside a club crying in the rain. I imagine it's raining. I don't think it was raining, but crying in the rain.
Just one storm cloud.
Yep. That just right over her, that the puppy, she's in a puppy circle and all these puppies are biting and her puppy's staring at butterflies. Now, when the puppy got its PDC, Jeff and I were both there. You got both grandpas there. And we both looked at him and were like, we might want to think about breeding this dog because he possesses it's Cheetah's brother, right? Possesses all the genetics we're looking for. Bites like the father, intensity of mom, like beautiful sable dog. It just kind of took him 6 months to wake up. You got to understand that the depending on how quickly that dog matures, depending on how quickly we can show them pictures. It depends on how quickly we need to show them pictures. If I have a dog that matures really quickly, I want to run through everything really young because I understand that everything's going to happen a lot quicker. So I'm going to then do this process a lot quicker. Whereas the slower to mature dog, I can take longer to introduce these things. When it comes to things that would potentially make the dog nervous, we want to teach the dog that when in time of nervousness, put yourself in drive and just move forward. These can curtains are scary, but the can curtains stop if you bite that person. How do you make stress go away? Put your teeth on it. I have taken so many dogs that other trainers said, nah, he's a wash. He won't do anything. And then we've titled these dogs. They just needed other communication. I'm not saying we're going to turn them into apex predators, but who the fuck needs an apex predator? Are you in SEAL Team 6? Are you a Green Beret? Are you on a SWAT team? No. You need a dog that goes roof, 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 and then you need a gun that goes behind it. Okay? The dog is just a deterrent. The dog is just to slow everything down. The dog is a force escalator, but I watched a video the other day and the guy was trying to sell these executive protection dogs that an executive protection dog should never be at the end of a leash barking. It should always be next to you barking. And I'm like, well, I think if you're paying that much for a dog, it should be able to do both. And furthermore, if I have 3 or 4 people trying to come at me, I kind of want that 6-foot leash and the dog at the end of it in aggression to keep the people 6 feet away from me. A ring style defensive handler of the dog waiting for the person to touch you for them to then bite. I don't want people touching me, strangers touching me, and then my dog bites people. The dog is a deterrent so that the people never get close enough and no one gets bit. It's all in how you introduce these scary things. Now, as puppies, when we raise litters, the second that their eyes and their ears are open, they're seeing these things. They're living in these things. It was the cutest thing. It was a puppy mobile. It was like a mobile above like a baby's crib, but it had a clatter stick in the middle, and it had cans, and it had bottles, and it had bells in it. And every time you go in, ding, 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 ring the bell and pet the puppies, play with the puppies. From the start, I had people are like, man, I got my puppy. It was clicker trained already. And I'm like, well, he wasn't clicker trained. He was clicker conditioned. Because as I'm walking in with the food, I'm going click, 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 click. And the food goes down and the puppies start eating. So the puppies already understand that the clicker produces dopamine. You now have to teach them that mark and that dopamine producer means something to them in relation to behavior, but they're conditioned. Potty training. Everyone's like, you potty trained my puppy for me. I go, no, the fucking puppy potty trained itself. I gave it the ability to potty train itself. This is genetics. I don't pick the puppy up and put it on one side. If you give the puppy a clean side, because when mom is there, mom cleans them. But when mom goes, they're going to go to the bathroom. But puppies inherently understand the concept of you don't shit where you sleep. So why don't we put the puppy in a place where they can have a nice, comfortable, clean place, and then they can also have a place that's absorbent. Now, if you get lazy on your cleaning of the dirty side, eventually they'll be like, that dirty side's too dirty. I'm going to go to the bathroom on the clean side. That's why when people have dirty dogs, it's usually that they're just not, the dogs are okay with being dirty because they've been conditioned that this is just part of life. It's the difference between, children that don't want to take baths and children that, actually do enjoy taking baths. I want to be clean. It's conditioned the puppy that they want to be clean. It's all conditioning. Can curtains are all just conditioning. I want my puppy to see that can curtain and get excited. Once I've taught them to be excited and I like their level of confidence with that excitement, now I can then teach them that just because you hear it doesn't mean you get excited. But realistically, in the ones, where are their can curtains? In obedience, you could put the dog in a down and they have to shake your can curtains and throw them on the side, right? One in front, one behind. Okay. It's from a stationary position. It's from a passive, relatively passive decoy. They're just sitting in a chair. But then when we go to protection, you're going to start heeling from the car and someone's going to come run out with two curtains. What is the dog supposed to do? Is the dog supposed to stay and heel, or is the dog supposed to bite? In that environment, the dog's supposed to bite. And I teach my dogs that when I come out of the car, when I start heeling, if you hear can curtains, like go to where the can curtains are. And people are like, but that's not neutral. And I go, but in that environment, I don't want neutrality. The cans are literally the command for the dog to bite. I've never had to tell one of my dogs in a handler attack, bite. Like, they know when the guy's running at us, charging at us, they know that they're supposed to bite. That's all conditioning. Now, I've gotten my one. Congratulations to me. Congratulations. That's very difficult. We should be proud of ourselves. Now we're going to train for the twos. How old is this dog at this point? 2? You can't show for a PDC until 14 months. The 14-month rule came from too many people showing puppies. There's like a bunch of like 7 and 8-month-old puppies that had gotten PDCs. It's a little much for a puppy. So 14 months. Because Cougar had her PDC at 12 months and her one at 13 months. This is prior to the rule. But she matured quickly. The dog is 14 months when they get their PDC. Even if they're 15 months, even if you do it in the same weekend, like now they're over a year old. By the time you're going for the twos, what's the dog? 2? Is a 2-year-old dog more mature than a 1-year-old dog? 100%. What if you have a German Shepherd? Or what if you have a Dutch dog? What if you have a dog that's not going to mature till 3? They can understand, like less complicated concepts when they're young. It doesn't mean that they're not able to perform. But when do they really start coming into their own? When does the dog really peak? When's the dog at their peak performance? 4 or 5 years old? I would say. I think that's really where the dog is going to be their strongest. For me, that's when I want to be in the 3s. I want to peak there. the lower levels are less advanced concepts. As we proceed through the levels, the concepts become more advanced, but the dog is also more mature and more advanced in training. You can't raise the puppy for PSA 3 and then go through the levels. You need to basically train the dog for the 1s with the neutrality of the 2s, which is just active, not aggressive. I see too many people healing around their puppies, figure eighting, 4 decoys. Blah, 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 blah. The puppy doesn't know what that suit is. The puppy's being conditioned to not respond to those distractions. But as you go through your 1 and your 2, like, they're going to have to go to those distractions. I understand this is an unpopular opinion. This is my opinion. I've done it a couple of times. I helped 2 or 3 people along the way. There's 100 different ways to skin a cat. I found this is the best way to skin the cats. Right? And I've been successful with not pushing the dog farther than they need to be pushed when they need to be pushed. If you don't have a can curtain, make one. They're pretty simple. Doesn't take that long. If you don't have one and you don't want to make one, find someone online that makes them. There's a ton of people now. I think it's so fucking cool that there's all these people making distractions. I never get jealous that other people are doing things that I've done or I've originally done. It makes me happy. I get excited that passing down the knowledge, whether I physically taught that person how to make the curtains, or they just seen my curtains, or they've seen a curtain that someone made that learned from me. I just think it's exciting that, this was a change in the way that people train their dogs by now having to deal with this really loud, obnoxious distraction. If you're a police canine handler, make a curtain and go out and show it to the dogs, because all it is like, teaching your dog to fight homeless people with recyclables, but it's a lot easier than having to deal with, the cans being all over the place. Like, we can actually control them. I can turn them on and turn them off. Expose the dogs. Expose the dogs to anything you possibly can, as opposed to saying, well, I don't need to show the dog that. Well, what if the dog has to encounter that? The more you know, the more you show, the more you grow. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.